Hello, everyone. This is Daniel, host of the Essays in Espresso podcast. I am joined by my good friend, Level Jake. How are you doing?
Gamer, I'm so ready to talk about some Fable.
Just for the uninitiated, I had Jake on not that long ago in an interview. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already. He's a fellow YouTuber, does some pretty cool videos, did a pretty awesome one on Roddy Out of Stories, another pretty great one on Dragon Valor, some good stuff. If you're wondering where Bouken and Acer are, they're not in this, but don't worry. I'm just trying to experiment with the channel, trying to find different ways to upload more content more frequently. So this is going to be in the same vein as our other spoiler cast extravaganza stuff that we do, but just with like different people, different stuff. And today we're going to be talking about Fable. Jake and I wanted to do Fable specifically because this is a game that we both grew up with. I loved Fable so much in high school. I just want to get this story out real quick. It was specifically because I played Fable so much that the blue X button on my controller was pressed in and wouldn't come back out.
That sounds familiar. I feel that. Mine was the you remember on the OG Xbox controllers, you had a black button and a white button?
Yeah, I remember.
Mine was the black button, which I think was for your melee weapon. That started to give out on me after a while, and I blame Fable for that specifically.
That's really funny. So before we get into talking about the game, what is your history with the game? Like, how did you get into it?
I was obsessed with Monster Hunter for the PS2. Even though I hadn't played it yet, that was my hyperfixation when I was in middle school. And I remember watching TV one day. I think it was on Spike TV. There was a show that did like a top 5 games of the month or something. Maybe it was of the year. I don't remember. They placed Monster Hunter at the very bottom. They were like, this is the worst game of this year or this month or whatever. And I was so fucking mad because I was so obsessed with Monster Hunter. I was like, I hadn't even played it yet. And I was like, this is going to be the best game ever. How could they have placed it so low? I was very upset. And then they showed Fable as the first game, which I'd never even heard of Fable before. But it went on my shit list for that reason. I was like, oh, fuck this poopy Fable game. It should be Monster Hunter in first. So I kind of went in like hating it a little bit for no reason. However, shortly after that, I saw one of the commercials run for the game, which had like a guy on a subway, and there were like variants of the commercial. In one, he like stops someone from stealing a lady's purse, and then in another one, he's like the perpetrator of a crime. So that was interesting, and that pulled me in, those commercials, to where I ended up talking to my best friend Xavier, who's not even like, he's kind of a gamer but not really, like 10% of the gamer I am and like 1% of the gamer you are. So the fact that he was interested in the game was like shocking to me. I bonded with him over that because we were both interested in it. That was my initial foray. I played it at his house. I won't go any further into the story, but obviously I want to ask you the same question. What was your initial experience with it?
So I used to have the Game Informer magazine as a kid, and I just remember seeing previews for it in the magazine. At first, I didn't give it too much attention because I think when they were first previewing the game, I didn't have an Xbox. So I just noticed it and I was like, oh, that looks all right, I guess, cool for Xbox, whatever. But then eventually I did get an Xbox, and I remember seeing Game Informer give it a pretty high score. I think they gave it like a 9 out of 10 or something. I was like, okay, now that I have an Xbox, I can get this game now. And this game looks really cool. So I was not aware of the insane promises that Peter Molyneux was making around this time. I don't know if a lot of people remember this because I feel like most people look back on the first Fable in particular like really, really, really fondly. But what a lot of people don't know is around that time, a lot of people were extremely disappointed because Peter Molyneux was making all these crazy promises that were completely unrealistic. Stuff like, oh, you could plant a seed and then you could
I was about to say that.
yeah, and you can watch it like grow into a tree in real time, and that tree is just gonna forever be like a part of the world. Probably made like a bunch of other promises I'm not remembering right now, but like a lot of people were like, where's all the cool stuff that was supposed to be in the game? And I feel like people were like doubly disappointed when they released the Lost Chapters, and none of that got into the game either. So like I just went into the game and I just accepted it for what it was, and I was just like, this game's really cool, you know?
It was the exact same for me. I didn't know anything about the promises they had made about the game, but I do remember going into a GameStop or like a Babbage's or something, overhearing someone that worked there being like, oh yeah, I'm so mad at that game because like it's not anything like they described it to be. And in my mind, I was just like, this was post me having played it with my best friend, but I was like, oh, this game's amazing. How could you say that? It's so good. But now I know, the history.
Yeah, the game had a pretty troubled history from what I gather. Like one of the big things was there was supposed to be a dragon in the game. It was supposed to be an epic dragon fight. And they couldn't get it into the first version of the game, but they were able to sneak it in the Lost Chapters. They did at least like in the Lost Chapters, even though like it is kind of middling, the extra content. I do think it is at least cool that like some of the stuff they wanted to do, they were able to like get it in there. But anyways.
I actually have a question for you if you don't mind. I want to talk about the cover art because like this is almost 10 years ago. I did like it's privated on my channel now. People can't watch it, but it was like a top 7 game covers and Fable placed for me because I fucking love the cover art for the retail box version of the original game, not the Lost Chapters, because I feel like there's some coloring there that makes it look less interesting. Do you have any kind of like opinion on the game's box art?
I don't know if I would rank it like that highly personally for me, but I always did like the idea that like the box art represented the major theme of the game, which is like your choices define who you are. Yeah, having like the main character like look at himself in the water and seeing like the like an evil version of himself, I think is pretty cool.
I'm going to cook here for just a second because this is so important to me, and it kind of starts to play into how I feel like we both love this game for like tons of overlapping reasons and then like our own little different reasons, because for me, the question of, especially as like a kid and a teenager, Ocarina of Time may have like been what pushed me into being interested in this. But, who am I going to be when I get older? And like the cover of Fable, there's no big sword pose, there's no explosions or screaming monsters. It's quiet, introspective. It's almost like melancholy in a way. And I feel like that's the emotional thesis of like the entire game. It's a kid who's staring at who they'll become because you're going to wonder, who am I going to be as I get older, which is a powerful concept for like a kid or a teenager.
I definitely feel you when you brought up Ocarina of Time, because I felt like that was one of the big things for me when I played Ocarina of Time. The transition from being a kid into adult Link. It's handled differently in Fable because obviously in Ocarina of Time, the kid portion of the game is much more significant. While in Fable, it's just, oh, your village gets burned down, and then you do some like training in the Heroes Guild, and then, oh, you're an adult. I felt like it was fine for what Fable was trying to do, but I guess I would have liked if there was a little bit more to it. As for the game itself, because we've been dancing around it a little bit, I replayed the game pretty recently. I have not touched this game since high school. Playing the game again now, to be transparent, I played the Anniversary Edition because it had controller support. Not that there's anything wrong with playing this game keyboard and mouse, obviously, but just for me personally, right? Like, that's how I grew up playing the game. That's my memory of the game. I did want to get this out of the way early on in the video, but something that the anniversary edition does that I thought was a little weird in how they handled it. I get it, but they still allow you to play the game with the original controls if you want, which is cool.
Mhm.
But they also had a modified control scheme that's supposed to feel more like how Fable 2 and 3 play. It makes the magic system in particular a lot less viable, because one of the cool things about Fable is how robust the magic system is. And you can, like, I think you hold down one of the triggers, you have like different setups of different like magical spells that you want on the face buttons. So you could have one setup where you have like lightning on X and fire on Y, or whatever it is you want it to be. But for the modified controls, you can only have one spell at a time on the B button, and you can scroll through a list of spells, but it's all only on the B button. And that kind of bothered me because, like, otherwise there was less friction with this control scheme. You didn't have to like constantly manually specifically decide to take out your melee weapon versus your bow. These controls were like generally like more quality of life improved over the original, but it also took away from how much freedom you had with like the magic system in particular. And I feel like there was a way they could have like done a better job with it.
I mean, when I played Fable Anniversary, I stuck with the old school control theme. So literally what you're telling me right now is like something I either wasn't aware of or completely forgot about, because I was like, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to play it how I'm used to.
Thing is, like, the new control scheme is more intuitive. The old control scheme, one of the things with the original Fable was it felt a little more like a sim type of game. And I don't mean like The Sims, but like there was a lot more simulation aspects to the game. And I feel like that's why there's a little more friction in the control scheme. You have a button specifically for taking out your sword. You have another button that's specifically for taking out your bow and arrow. The modified controls is, okay, you just have one button and it'll just put away whatever you have, which is, again, a little more intuitive. And I guess that brings me to, because I remember talking to you like before we recorded this, like one of the things that was one of the things you really liked about the game was the simulation aspect of it. So I just wanted to like, get your take on that. Like what about that like kind of drew you in?
So glad you're asking me this, gamer. It's like the question that I've been waiting for. This is like what made me obsessed with Fable. When you first play Fable, and it's hard because like as an adult and people that have like pushed how far gaming can push technology, it's difficult to think back about like really put yourself in the world of like what the limitations were that a game could be. But when I played Fable, when you start the game in Oakvale, me playing that game in Oakvale was basically my first experience of video game domestic immersion in an RPG, because you made such a good point. Such a good point, Daniel, bringing up The Sims, because that was something I was thinking about the other day. I was like, you can experience these things where people are kind of like going about their day kind of on autopilot, where they're working or they're stopping and they're talking to each other. And I love how you can like, run by people and hear the conversations that they're having, but they're doing these small human things, chores, errands, helping each other out, working their jobs, whatever. And that created like immediately such a strong flavor of immersion that immediately like brought me down to earth, because, I'm not saying anything anybody who's played Fable doesn't already know, but the world, especially at the start of the game, it doesn't revolve around you. It exists alongside you. Man, all of these little things that come together to make one of the areas what they are for the game, especially like the settlement areas like Bowerstone and Oakvale. Yeah, it feels like a simulation and RPG merging in a way that I had never experienced before. You're not even dropped into like missions as much as it feels like a fluid transition from the game's title menu into just like doing little chores around the community because you're just trying to raise a little money to buy your sister a birthday gift. So much of that felt like the ability that they had when they made Fable to like layer its static quests into a world that had like routine and these organic conversations occurring around you. And you know, it's like when you're in Oakvale and you're going about like doing these quests and however you choose to do them, the world starts to like respond to you. Like the townspeople will take note and be like, "Oh, that kid's kind of a dick," or he's like, he's really good." Man, that's it's like it's bringing me back now. Just speaking on that, I love Fable for that because like even now, you know, like I've like role played in MMOs. Big
Yes.
difference from ERP. In case anybody gets offended, you know, I love immersion. I love role play. I love being able to completely submerge myself into this fantasy world. Fable was Fable took me by the fucking throat, man, and was like, "This is what you want. Enjoy." It was so awesome.
I find that really interesting because I don't really role play, which is ironic considering like RPGs are like one of my favorite genres. But there is something about Fable that makes you want to it gets you to care about like how your character exists in the world and how other characters perceive him. Almost every single time I play the game, I think I did an evil playthrough one time only. And that's simply because it felt bad. Like, like it
Yeah.
didn't feel good to be this little shit that was just like ruining people's day. And I think that says something, right? Like the fact that, like, because it's a video game, right? Like, logically speaking, it doesn't matter. These are just NPCs, they don't really matter. But like the game gets you to care and you feel like, oh, I don't want to ruin people's day. Like I want to be a hero. And I think that's another aspect of it that always appealed to me. And it's something that appeals to me in a lot of RPGs is I want to feel like a hero. I want to be this gallant knight that saves the day. I think another thing that Fable does really well in that, like, getting you to get immersed and to feel like you are the character is by starting you off as a kid. I know I was being a little critical of it earlier of how, like, oh, I wish that we would have done a little more with that, but it was still, though, a great choice because you truly feel your growth as a
Yeah.
hero. You start at nothing, like literally nothing. You are a little snot-nosed kid that is completely powerless, and you just like watch as your village gets burned to the ground, and then you slowly train him up. You slowly get stronger as the game goes on. And Fable's not like a difficult game, right? Like it's a pretty easy game. But even still, right? Like in the beginning of the game, you're pretty weak. But by the end of the game, you are unstoppable. You are just like mowing things down. And it feels really good to see that transition, to see that progression and that growth from, a little kid to this hero that can just like decimate waves of enemies.
I love that because with Fable, it also was my introduction to like looking at development of a character in a way that went beyond like the variables. So with Fable, like you literally wear the experience of your gameplay on your character. It wasn't just like I'm doing bigger numbers, I have this higher level on a screen. You wear the entire journey of your character on your shoulders up until those credits roll. You know, you could make the case that it's like, oh, well, of course you get better gear, but it's like it's more than that. You're scarred up if you took too many hits in combat. You get older because you level up. If you level up even so much to the point where you get really old, your voice changes. Man, there are so many in like that's not even like talking about like being good versus evil like you were talking about and how that changes your appearance as well. It's like this constant reminder of where your journey has taken you. And that brings me back to like Ocarina of Time, where Ocarina shows you the jump to adulthood, but Fable I know like you have your gripes with how limited your experiences is playing as when you're young, but Fable lets you like live that journey
Mm-hmm.
of growing older and taking shape into someone who's like physically reflective of all those choices that you made. And earlier you were talking about, which I don't want to skip over this because that is a fucking amazing point that you made about like feeling compassion in this pixel world, because one of my like deepest core feelings that I can trace back to like my earliest time of playing Fable with my best friend is the quest where you have to take the traders through Darkwood to get to Oakvale.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And yeah, there's that one trader where he's been attacked by a Balverine. He asks you to help him. The traders in your party are like, maybe we shouldn't take him because he looks pretty bad off. And if you take him, great. However, if you don't get through the Darkwood fast enough, he will turn, become a Balverine, and then potentially kill your traders and end the quest. And it's interesting because like Fable doesn't operate and it's good and evil. Sometimes it does. Sometimes the options are very limited in the capacity of like how you will influence a quest. But other times it's so much bigger than like the binary, or like we have games like, this isn't knocking them at all. I'm only saying this to make a point with games like Dragon Age, where it's like you have a good option, an evil option, or a funny man option, or a stoic option. And I feel like Fable asks a more important question even than like, are you good or evil? Or even somewhere in between. It's like, how much are you willing to risk to help someone or to profit off of something? Like one of the earliest quests in the game is the raid on Orchard Farm. And the evil quest pays you like 200 gold over being good and protecting the farm, which pays you less. But it's like that's where like this compassion that you've been building from the world from the start. You see Oakvale rated at like the very early stages of the game. You're already starting to like have this slow roll of compassion building for this world and the characters and what's occurring in it, because you already know that you're going to have an influence on it. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
once it's actually put on your shoulders, hey, you actually get to dictate like what's going to happen now. You're like a major player in this world. There's something really awesome about that. I feel like Fable 2 and Fable 3 weren't able to capture that as well. And maybe that's
Yes.
unfair because it's the first game. I'm sorry, I'm rambling when I have like other things I want to ask you about too. But
No,
yeah, all of
I'm
that
glad
is
I'm glad you brought up Fable 2 and 3 though, because I feel like they are such a significant drop off. It's not even close to me. Fable 2 to me is just okay, and Fable 3 to me was just like I straight up hated Fable 3. Like I really did not like Fable 3. One of the things that separates the first game compared to 2 and 3 is I felt because Fable 1 feels like a proper action RPG. And it felt like with Fable 2, they were moving away from the RPG ness of it. The mechanics felt less impactful. Like in particular, like the magic system. I remember the magic system in Fables 2 and 3 was so pathetic. It was like, you have such cool spells in Fable 1. You have so many dynamic spells, so many different spells that do so many different things. You have a spell that lets you teleport behind enemies. You know the lightning spell can chain between other enemies. The fireball spell can be charged up and create a big explosion. Like all of them are different and have different practical uses. While in Fables 2 and 3, spells literally are only just either a projectile or you can charge it for an area of effect attack, and that's about it. And it's like it was so dumbed down that it's like it just took away all of the character and all of the strategy that was in the first game. And I feel like that statement kind of like defined Fables 2 and 3 for me. It just took away all the character, took away all the technical elements, and it just flattened everything. And that's why Fable 1 for me just it feels like such a special game. There's no other game that I can think of that feels like Fable 1. Like I feel like there's after Fable 1 was pretty influential in a lot of ways. Like I've seen other games that have taken ideas from Fable, yet there's still nothing that feels like Fable 1.
And I can't even think like I could not make a case for a single feature that was taken out of Fable 1 and then to look at Fable 2 and Fable 3 and think to myself, well, that was worth it. I mean, they traded the soul, and I'm trying to think what they traded, or not the soul necessarily, but the character of the first game. And I look at 2 and 3 and I'm like, for what? What was the reason to lose that? I don't feel like I've gained anything other than updated visuals, which I'd take a shitty looking game any day if it like bangs on the same cylinders of something I genuinely felt like an interest in or love toward. Like, yeah.
I will at least grant that the dog was a good inclusion. I really like the dog.
I love the dog and I love the role that it plays in the story, but if I have to fucking have it bark and stop to dig up something else, like another condom or another 5 gold, yeah, you know, there are a lot of reasons not to go for me to not go back and play Fable 2 again, and just the constant stopping and digging, walking 5 feet, stopping and digging. Oh my god, I hated that.
Yeah, I mean, they could have probably tweaked the behavior a bit, but I still love the dog.
Yeah, I love the dog too.
Yeah. Well, like at the end of Fable 2, it gives you a choice whether or not to kill your dog. And I was like, hell no. No.
Oh yeah. I will resurrect the dog every time before I bring back everyone who died because of the tower being built. Fuck that. Give me my dog back.
Yeah,
I don't care about gold. Give me my dog.
Give me my dog, exactly. Now, one thing now this is an issue even with Fable 1. One thing that always bothered me though is the sim aspect of the game. Of these games, in particular, first one, I always thought was really admirable. But like this was something I guess was magnified for me when I played Fable 2. Was you have like a pretty prominent like female character in 2. She's like kind of like a big boisterous kind of like almost Viking-ish lady. And I remember really liking her. I was like, this chick is awesome. Like, she's really friendly. You know, her voice actress was phenomenal. She did a wonderful job of like bringing that character to life. But you can't romance her. And I always thought it was like really odd that like Fable as a series has always been about like making choices, making these meaningful choices. But like when it comes to romance, and this is just a big part of this is just because I'm a hopeless romantic, and this I love this sort of thing, and it's just like a bummer for me that it's just so nothing in these games, right? You can marry a random NPC, and that's about it, right? Like at least in Fable 1 you can get married to Lady Grey. So she is at least a character. She has some personality. But like she's evil. So if you're like trying to play through the game as like a good hero, you wouldn't want to romance her because she's like pretty explicitly like a bad person. There's even like a demon door that you can't open unless you romance her.
Yeah, you gotta have the ball and chain or he won't open up for you.
A posh one.
Yeah, a posh one. Dude, that like from I love the demon doors. They're so like that's such whimsical fantasy. They can be like serious or silly, and they have all different kinds of like personalities and conditions and riddles. It literally makes the world feel so much like a storybook.
They're so memorable. Their dialogue is so good. I know one that I'm sure it always stuck with me because it was so funny, and I know for a fact.
I know what you're gonna say.
I know for a fact it resonates with you. Every fat person is a skinny person trying to get out, but I think every skinny person is a fat person trying to get in.
Yeah, no shame in my game. If that game had a female like character option for you to play as, yeah, I would have been there. I probably like married someone in that game. I'm sure, like when I was a teenager, and was like disappointed that by giving them a bunch of meat and beer, they didn't get fat. Like,
that is like, so funny.
Let me make my wife the way that I want her to be. Come on, Peter.
That's so funny. But like,
yeah.
But yeah, like that. Aside from Lady Grey, like all the other, you can't even romance Whisper. You know, like I feel like that would have made sense if you wanted to like remain a hero, but romance someone who's also a hero. You can only romance random NPCs that when you do romance them, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really matter. They're just kind of around, and they'll just like stay in a house that you bought, and they're just like, "Oh, I love you." And it's like it's totally shallow and meaningless. And
Yeah, the only like defense I would make for it, because I agree with you. I've been sitting here and thinking about what you've been saying, and I'm like, I've never really thought about before the fact that you really lack meaningful, impactful relationships in those games. And with Fable 1 in particular, yeah. But I do think also that like having someone that you find in game that kind of works outside of the scope of anything major with the narrative is kind of nice, like because there's no breaking apart of the game world for you to marry or romance like a major character, because it's just like, you know, I think I told you before how I used to play that game and make my own little objectives for myself because I was a fucking crackhead. So I would play the game like I'd be in like Bowerstone at like the game's beginning, fresh out of the Heroes Guild, and I'd be like, all right, my first task is I'm going to go to Greatwood. I'm going to train. You know, the day is going to tick by, like, you know, around the evening time before the sun sets, because I refuse to teleport travel like anywhere if I could help it. It was like when the sun starts to set, head back to Bowerstone, sell what loot I've got, and I'm either going to have enough money to buy a house, or I'm going to have enough to get really fucking drunk at the tavern, hang out with the people, and then crash out and try again tomorrow to save up enough money to buy a house. And that was like one of my first like in my first goals in the game that I would make for myself. And then that would like build, because like by following that narrative for myself, it'd be like, oh, I'm getting to know like all of these NPCs that live around Bowerstone. Like I go to the bar and it's like, oh, these are like people that I've like drank with before and hung out with. And a lot of that is like the role play aspect being incorporated into the game for me. But then there's like a part of that that's like kind of special, because it'd be like, you know, I'm just expecting to go to the tavern and get drunk again. And then there's this girl there who's like, hey, and you like the flirty emote where your guy's like, hey. And then you bring him home and then you're married and it's all good. So I don't know. I feel like it's not like necessarily a bad thing that you can have like these low stakes relationships in Fable, but it would have been very nice to have an option where something was more meaningful and you felt like, yeah, this had like a bigger effect than just marrying kind of a nobody, no name, no face person. So I definitely see where you're coming from.
For sure. And again, I don't think this is like some huge criticism towards the game or anything, because at the end of the day, the romance is not the point. This is just me.
That's true.
This is just me being like, this is what I like though.
No, dude, because what I gotta say, dude, when you're a kid and you're playing Fable for the first time, and you have sex in that game for the first time, it is important, because the screen goes black and you hear the voices and you're sitting there like either by yourself or with a friend or whoever, and you're like, oh man, oh, this is really happening, right?
Yeah.
This is what it's gonna be like in real life.
Yeah, the screen's gonna go dark.
My eyes are just gonna go completely dark, and she's gonna be like, move over, or whatever they say. Like, I got the bitchy wife in the beginning of the game. She did not like me.
So there's actually a reason for that. So apparently there's a bug in the game where if you try to romance someone that seems like a nice wife, once you marry them, they become bitchy, and vice versa.
That is, I never knew that.
Yeah.
I learned something new.
Yeah. Because when I replayed the game, I was looking up a bunch of stuff and I found out about that. And I was just like, oh, that explains a lot.
That reminds me of like in Civilization 3, they accidentally made Gandhi like this bloodthirsty warlord for his personality instead of being like a peaceful guy. It was a bug. It was totally on accident.
So I just think it's super interesting and fun that like you took the role playing aspect of it so seriously as a kid. You were like, all right, got to plan out my day. And that's like totally opposite to me, where I was just like going in, just like, let me just go kill shit. Like I don't care what time of day it is. Like I'm not going to have breakfast. No, it's time to go exploring. It's time to go level up.
Daniel, you know better than anybody. You got to get that protein in before you get your workout in.
This is true. Protein is very important.
I think that's cool too. How we both have like different ways that like really got us into our groove in the game.
Big thing for me, and I think it's funny that we keep bringing it back to Zelda. But to be fair, even the developers themselves compared the game to Zelda.
Yeah.
But one, and this is not a criticism towards Zelda, because Zelda's never meant to be like a hardcore RPG. That's not the point. But I'd always wanted a game that felt like Zelda, but did have those RPG elements where you can level up and you have stats and you learn new moves. And that was Fable. You know, obviously Fable didn't have like the puzzle solving aspects, and you know the level design in Fable is nowhere near as complex as, you know, a Zelda game for its dungeons. But even still, it had action RPG combat where you could level up your character and you could dictate how to like increase your stats. And I was like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I've been waiting for. And it's so funny because like I remember at the time I was thinking like, oh, this is so great. I only wish like maybe the combat was a little more like Devil May Cry. And then it's like that's asking for something completely unrealistic. The game was already doing so much, but for me, I was just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool though if I could like juggle enemies and like styling on enemies and stuff like that? Okay, that's totally unfair, like totally unfair expectation. But like,
it would have been cool.
It would have been cool.
That's what kept Game Informer from giving it a 10 when it was a 9. Somebody out there was like, just need a little more Devil May Cry.
It needed a little more style switching and need a little more high time juggling enemies with spells. That unironically would have been cool if you could like send enemies up in the air and then like shoot them with spells, and it keeps them like staying up in the air to keep your combo going.
Dude, that's such a unironically, that's such a good point. It goes back to what you say about the spells, because the variants of spells that you have in Fable 1, so many of them have such good fucking chemistry together.
Yeah.
Like using Berserk and multi-hit, or using multi-arrow and multi-strike. It's like, bro, like
you know, it's funny you bring up multi-hit because I feel like I never did anything with the multi-arrow. But for this most recent playthrough, for some reason, I was like, let me mess around with multi-arrow. And I was like having so much fun with the multi-arrow. Like like I was just raining arrows on enemies constantly. And it was so much fun. But yeah, you're right about the synergy. Like you could do so many cool things. Like you said with berserking and using multi-hit, or like using the assassin rush. Always really liked. I think the spell was called Inflame, where you would like punch down in the ground and like everything around you would just like blow up into flames. So
that's
that was my go. No, it's cool. That was my go-to. Was like Assassin's Rush, Inflame. It's so good.
In Flames, and then like the Divine Wrath and the Infernal Wrath were every middle school, high schooler guy's like wet dream of a magic spell, just because it's so like intense, and like you're like summoning all of this like fire and damage. It's like edgy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the Infernal Wrath, I think that was added in Lost Chapters. I don't think that was in the original.
Both Divine Wrath and Infernal Wrath were Lost Chapters exclusives.
But you're right. It has this like kind of like almost anime quality to it, where like you're charging up. It's just like raining down like, you know, these like energy beams, and it's so cool.
There were like so many cool spells that you could start a new playthrough, use these new abilities, and be like, this kind of feels like a new game.
Not only that, but like certain spells, you could not get them to the max level unless you were fully evil or fully good.
God, I don't even remember that. That's crazy.
like the Berserk spell, you couldn't max that spell out unless you were evil. That kind of leads me into what I do think is a very critical problem with the game. And it's something I touched on early is that this game is really easy. And I think if I were designing this game, I would have removed the healing component from food in particular. Like, you get so many healing items, you get so many potions, you get resurrection vials, like, you get so much stuff that nothing can stop you. Like, even if like you end up dying, it doesn't matter because you have like 8 resurrection vials. You have 90 potions that you can buy pretty easily. You've got like cherry pies and apple pies, so much food, and it's like you could just guzzle all of it down. And then on top of that, the healing spell. And so if I was designing the game, I would make it so that food can give you experience points, but not heal you. I would either remove the resurrection vials entirely or make it so they can only carry one. And I would limit the amount of potions that you can hold to like maybe like 5 or 10. Because otherwise, like, yeah, this game just like poses no threat.
Yeah, any kind of pressure on you as the player is really cheapened with just this like limitless supply of between the healing items and the spells and the resurrection files. It's very frustrating because it's like the only things you feel where there are really any real stakes are if you fail a quest because like an NPC companion dies, like with the traders going through the dark wood, or for things that you can fail that don't really have any kind of great overarching meaning for the story, like doing a like there's like a demon door in Darkwood where you have to fight waves of hobs that you can fuck up and then have to restart. It's like outside of those things, it's like, but like this goes back to another point too, because it's like the story in Fable never really meant that much to me. There are like moments that I think are cool, and there are instances where I feel like something not the story was saying, but maybe something happening behind the scenes, like the prison sequence later in the game, I think is like the best part of the story for me, not counting lost chapters if we're talking just about Fable. Yeah, there's nothing like that like interesting, which is like kind of okay because Fable's storytelling is so like traditional while putting its own little like whimsical like English charm, English wit, English humor to it, which is really nice. But it's still like a very by the numbers kind of like story of revenge.
And I think that's
Yeah.
fine. I think it's okay for the story to be as simplistic as it is because it allows for all of this player expression. And I feel like that's at the core of what makes Fable such a fun game is that you have the freedom to play it how you want. You can take whatever quests on that you want. You can explore the world to your heart's desire.
This goes back to one of my contentions in the Radiata Stories video. It's like if Fable is more than the story it tells, and the story is what it is, this is just me speaking. I'm not speaking for anyone else when I say this. I would have completely done without the story and had like, a dozen or two more quests that didn't have any kind of great deal of impact on the world and were more like personal for my character or the regions that the quests were in. I didn't need any kind of end of the world scenario. It helps to have like your push as a child and joining the Heroes Guild because you have that friction there that occurs that starts to get the ball rolling for you. But even that, I feel like could have been traded for something else that could have had like equal emotional equity while still pushing the story forward.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Because wasn't the original concept for Radiata that there was not going to be a main story and that the whole game would have just been all the little side diversions and just doing quests for all the different like townsfolk?
Yeah, exactly. I would have liked that for Fable, I think too.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine a game like that though, because like, how do you define the end of the game then?
Yeah, I can't think of a good example right now. Shit, I wish I would have thought of this question earlier. I'm gonna get back to you on that outside of like this recording because I feel like that's an interesting conversation to have. I feel like I've surely played a game that doesn't have like a single player RPG that doesn't have like a really strict narrative that you follow. There's got to be something that I've played,
Not
for better or for worse.
nothing comes to mind for me personally.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to Fable, something else that I found out while I was like researching the game was that originally they actually wanted the world to be like one big continuous world, which they could not pull off on the Xbox. On one hand, I think that would have been cool, but I don't know what that would have like specifically added to the game other than it just being like, no load times would have been great, obviously. It's not an open world in the same way that that other games are. I think it being the way that it is ended up being a good thing because it probably allowed them to make like each individual like zone that you do load into. It makes each of them feel very like handcrafted. It feels very detailed. And that's another thing too. When I was looking up like the development of the game, is that I forget the name of the project. I think it was called Project Reality. No, that's not it. Anyways, like one of the versions of Fable that was being made before it became Fable was supposed to be procedurally generated game. And I'm glad it wasn't that because I don't know about you, but I hate stuff like that. Like I like everything in a game to be handcrafted. I'm not a fan of games that have randomly generated dungeons. I'm not a fan of games that have content that's just like assembled together, like I prefer when every piece of the game you can feel the hands of, you feel the fingerprints of the people that made this game. Someone had to make the conscious decision, right, to like to put this item here or to make this texture look this certain way. I don't think the game would be as memorable or as good if we had gotten that procedurally generated version of it.
You make a couple interesting points. The first one being all the way back to the beginning of what you said. The load times for Fable, you remember what they were like on the OG Xbox?
I mean,
they were fucking brutal. They were so slow. Did you ever play Morrowind on the OG Xbox?
A little bit. And
yeah, you played it a little bit because you were just loading. That game loaded so slow, dude.
Not only that, but with Morrowind, I was so mad that I was like trying to like kill a rat, and I was missing so much, and I was just like, I'm hitting it though. Why are you saying I missed? I'm clearly hitting it. Like I'm so mad.
Yeah, I played Morrowind after I played Fable, so I was right there with you, like swinging my sword at a rat and just being like,
I think I think it was easier in my mind to accept like in a turn-based RPG if my character misses because there's a level of abstraction there where I'm like, this is supposed to represent what is happening in a battle, right? Like that's the point of turn-based. What you're seeing is not what is actually physically happening in the battle. It's a representation of it. But in Morrowind, I'm like, no, I'm fucking hitting the stupid rat.
Right. Yeah, that's like one of my earliest memories with Morrowind was swinging at enemies and it missing. And I like Morrowind's like a good game, but that was a rough start for me to get into the Elder Scrolls. There was a when you said Project Realism, I remember Project Ego being
that's what it's called. Yeah. It was Project Ego. That's what it is.
And there was another point that you had made that I wanted to get to. Fuck, it was what you had said toward the end.
Oh, about the procedurally generated.
Yeah, when I was younger, I really loved procedurally generated stuff, especially because I came from that world with Dot Hack, where that was like outside of the towns that you visited to do your town stuff. That was like the game was a lot of procedurally generated stuff outside of like a few instances. So I carried that with me forward. Really liked that kind of stuff for a long time. These days, I like that you brought up wondering what Fable would have been like as like an open world. I love like these small, intimate, handcrafted areas for
Yeah.
games, because with Fable, if it had been an open world game, I feel like that definitely would have cheapened my ability to even like, without having played the game for a while now, I can still look back and like remember the towns, the Hob Cave, Twin Blades Bandit Camp. You know, there's so much there that's just like embedded into my memory because it's like every little thing mattered. Placement mattered, enemy placement mattered. It was awesome.
No, 100%. And I can't imagine a version of this game that's missing all of that. Like,
Yeah.
what even is it anymore? And I'm sure it would have been like at least an interesting game because, you know, these were talented developers. But I'm just glad that we got the game that we got rather than whatever Project Ego was originally supposed to be. But it is cool if you look back at those old E3 trailers for Project Ego because a lot of the graphics are the same. Like
Yeah.
it's like oh that's the same character model. Like that's the same stuff that made it into Fable. And I believe before Project Ego, they were working on another game, literally called Heroes, I believe, something like that. This team was working on like multiple different projects. I think another one was called like Wonder World. And Wonder World was supposed to be like a wizard game where like it was supposed to be
Yeah.
like battling wizards. And apparently that game only exists in like design documents. They never even like got it to a point where like they didn't even like make anything. And there is technically an old prototype demo that's called Wonder World, but that's more that like if it's not really. That's if anything, that's like a super alpha version of Fable. Like you even see Oakvale in it, or no, not Oakvale. You see Bowerstone in it, like a really early version of Bowerstone, which is really cool.
I think I might know what you're talking about. That version of Bowerstone has like, it's panned out and you can see like this entire castle wall around the town from the outside. I don't know if that's the exact same thing that you're talking about, but I do remember with Wonder World, I was reading what one of the devs was saying about it in like the earliest iteration of what the game was supposed to be, and he said something to the effect of you can feed a fish in the water and it will turn into a merman, and then you can ride the merman into battle. And it's like, yeah, wouldn't have connected that to Fable, but yeah, very cool, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, clearly these were developers that were very creative, very eccentric. The main creative force behind Fable, believe it or not Peter Molyneux. It was these two brothers. There's Simon Carter and there's Dean Carter. And these are the actual people that we have to thank for the Fable series. Peter Molyneux came in like later in development. So I'm not someone that explicitly adheres to auteur theory. That being said, I think it should be noted both brothers worked on the first Fable. Simon Carter left sometime during the development of Fable 2, and then Dean left sometime during the development of Fable 3. So I'm just throwing that out there, and I'm just saying I think there might be a correlation to the involvement of the brothers and the quality of the series.
There's something to be said for the fact that Dean was a programmer at Bullfrog with Peter and then left Bullfrog. And then they work on this Fable game, and then Peter gets involved, and now he's not involved in Fable. So it's like, make
Yeah,
whatever conclusions you want to, but
for sure. I do think it's a shame. It's pretty clear that like these two were super creative guys and they had a lot of like crazy ideas and wanted to make some really cool games. Peter Molyneux, I don't know if he was necessarily the right person. It's hard to say to work with these guys, but like at the very least, Peter seemed like really enthusiastic about their ideas, but maybe not necessarily realistic. And he probably should have shut his mouth during interviews more.
yeah, there's one interview he did where there's like, it may have even been at E3 where he was talking to an interviewer. He was talking about how in Fable you would be able to find your own villains in the game or your own like rivals. And so it would be like, and this is back when he was still trying to spin it that it would be online multiplayer. And he was like, you could go to your friend's world and see Balrog the Bloodslayer, like walking around killing your friend's villagers, and then go back to your world, and then your enemy is like completely different from what his is. And I really wish I could occupy the headspace behind just saying the most fucking ridiculous things about the game you're developing. Because to me, it's like you're either just that much of a compulsive liar, or you're so out of touch with development to where you remember sitting in the room and pitching ideas, and you've just not kept up with the game since then. So you still think that's on the table. I just don't understand.
So it's funny you bring up like this like online co-op thing. They had trouble, like they did at least try to do some form of multiplayer, but like since they had no experience with either working on games that were online or even like making a two-player game, they struggled to have like the most minimal possible amount of two player in the game, that they were like, okay, this is not worth it.
Yeah.
Like it's like they were like, this is just not working. We're gonna scrap this, because like at the end of the day, a video game is something that has to ship, and they need to be realistic about what they're doing, and that's unfortunately why the dragon got the axe in at the end, because at first they were like, we're gonna do this big cool dragon, and then they were like, okay, maybe the dragon should just be like a side thing, and then they're like, okay, maybe the dragon can be like a hidden thing, and then they're like, okay, we can't have a dragon at all.
Yeah. That's a bummer.
Yeah. Until eventually, again, it got re-included in the Lost Chapters. I actually found a video online that shows what the original dragon was supposed to be like, because the dragon is still in the game's code, just very unfinished. I do have like kind of a cool story about this. I tried looking up whether I could still find the forum thread, and for some reason, I couldn't find it anymore, but it is what it is. Way back, I used to use this forum site called NeoSeeker. I vividly remember being on the forum and someone was like, guys, if you use the shovel glitch in this part of the game, I believe it was in the snowy town. If you remember that, like that you can only have access to it like towards the end of the game, there is a shovel glitch. And this is not in the Lost Chapters version of the game. This is the original vanilla version of the game. There is a glitch that lets you go out of bounds with the shovel. Because what happens is there's a long animation with the shovel. If you boot up the Lost Chapters, they changed the animation because people found this glitch. There is a long animation of you like shoveling up, and
yeah, I think I do remember hearing. It's either I heard it from you or I'm like remembering a connect. Yeah,
I may have told you, and someone was like, I used this glitch to get out of bounds in that town, and he was like, I kept going until like I hit the edge of the map, and then it took me to a new area, and it was called Dragon Cliffs.
That's crazy.
And I remembered that, and I'm like, I'm going to try this. And I did it. And it was real. He was not kidding. It was real. The thing is, though, the only thing in that area, I just remember it being like untextured mess. It was just, there wasn't really anything to see. But it was still cool. I was like, oh my God, what did I find? This is so cool. Like,
God, there's two things about that I have to say. One, I miss that energy of finding something that cool in a game. I feel like I've not experienced that since like, I don't know, maybe Demon Souls. Like it's been so long. That's such an awesome feeling. The other thing is that is such like elementary school friend tells you this thing about a game that you think is totally bullshit and then you do it. But for once it's actually like legit.
It's
Because I had
actually
a
legit. Yeah.
yeah, I had a friend who told me he was like, "Oh, bro, when you're playing as the kid in Oakvale, you can max out your evil and grow horns and wings and then fly around and like zap people with a fireball." It's like, I don't know about that one, buddy. Like,
Uh, So that's really funny because I had a friend that was obsessed with realism in high school, and he told me that in Fable, if you play the game long enough, you die of old age.
yeah, I remember
So
you saying
funny.
that. I think that okay, to be fair, feel like that may have been like a rumor online that people just ate up because I swear to God, that same friend who told me the story about the kid being able to like grow wings and fly around Oakvale, I'm pretty sure he also told me that too. But he was like a compulsive liar, so I was like, okay, like you're full of it. But
But the
maybe
thing,
that was something, yeah.
maybe this kid found the rumor as well, but he told me that he did it himself, and
Oh my God.
the way that he described it was so like it stuck in my mind because he said that he saw that his life all of a sudden his life bar randomly started going down on its own, and he said no matter what he did, like he kept eating food, he kept drinking potions, and his life bar would keep going down, and it said like your time has come, and then yeah,
God.
like, and that was it. And what's always like really funny to me about this is, again, this is a kid that like cared so much about realism, and like he got annoyed and was like very dismissive of other games that were unrealistic. And I'm like, Fable is a super unrealistic game. What are you doing, dude? Like you're casting spells, like your guy gets like really fat if he just like in like a couple of minutes, if he just like gorges on meat. It's like, dude, none of this is
Yeah.
realistic.
That's really weird that he was like that when, yeah. Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah, and like Fable's like also like a really goofy game, and I mean that with love. Like I love that it's a goofy game, but like it's true, it's like a really silly game, and I don't know why like you would care so much about its realism.
Yeah, that's kind of odd. I like to a degree I understand where he's coming from because like if he was like immersed in the same way I was, the realistic and realism maybe aren't exactly the same thing to him. But my when you say like Fable is a silly game, it's like I always equated it to like this. It was like a Monty Python game almost. There were moments
Yeah.
of it that were, which is funny because I like we've obviously talked about Fable 3 and John Cleese being the narrator or being the voice of the butler.
Hmm.
But I love that. Like I'm so glad seeing the new Fable game, the trailers.
Yeah.
They are like they're still riding that same sense of humor that they've had for the first game. I feel like if anything has persisted in Fable, like each game has had like a really good sense of humor.
Yeah, the new game is looking good. I'm also happy that it's not going to be an Xbox exclusive. It's going to be on Steam. It's going to be
Thank God.
it's even going to be on PlayStation, which is interesting. We've already made our grievances about like Fables 2 and 3 known, but like I still have hope. Like based on the trailer, they have the tone right. Like it's like you said, like they still got that sense of humor. It looks like they understand the assignment. And
Yeah.
I am just hoping, that they nail it. Like, because this has the potential to be really cool. Just take what was done in the first game and they expand on it. Curtail some of the issues with the difficulty, but just like take that core idea of just like lots of cool spells, different ways of leveling up, the game being catered around like how you play. Because like I thought you brought up like an interesting point earlier where like the game just kind of exists outside, like you just kind of live in the world doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily revolve around you in the beginning, but like the way that you play the game, affects the world. Characters will start caring about you. You know, you'll have like random NPCs yelling at you, "That's my man!"
Yeah, I love that, dude. It's so awesome.
You have a tangible effect on the world in a way that maybe I'm misremembering Fable 2 and 3, but I didn't feel that same sense of connection to the world. Like, I didn't feel like my actions felt as meaningful in those games compared to in the first game. So make the combat good, you know, make the level progression good, you know, and just make me feel like I'm having a tangible effect on the world. And
I
just for
feel
me,
like this.
and just for me personally, let me romance a goth baddie. Just for
Yeah.
me, just for me.
And then for me, throw in like a 350-pound, like, I don't
Yeah,
know, short stack hot girl for me,
yeah.
just for Jake specifically. I feel like this is one of the instances where it's like you can just simply say, make it good. Whereas normally, like some people in game dev might get combative about that and be like, yeah, you can't just say make it good. Like you can't just say make it better and then not give anything of substance. But it's like you can with Fable. All
Yeah.
anyone has wanted since Fable 1 is to just take what they did and build on it a little more. They're not asking for you to do all this fucking crazy stuff on the side. Like, yeah, just make it good. Just take Fable 1, make it better. It doesn't have to be like this whole other thing.
We're not
And
asking anyone to reinvent the wheel. We just want another Fable 1.
and dude, and you make like another point that I think is really interesting too, because it's like the way that people interact with your character is so much more like varied and detailed than it is in 2 and 3, because in the first Fable game they're much more reactive to your title, to your morality, to the type of equipment you're wearing, to the quests that you've done. And in
Chicken
2 and
chaser.
3,
You
yeah,
chase chickens.
chicken chaser, I believe. Like e- everything is so much more like, I can't think of a word besides in your face, which I feel like has a negative connotation to it. It's really all around you in like the warmest, most pleasant way. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. If you're good, it's around you in like the warmest, most pleasant way. And if you're evil, for me, it like kind of hurt a little bit when like you're playing the evil character in the first Fable game, and people, not even before you walk up to them, they'll see you in the distance, cover their head and run away just fucking screaming.
Yeah.
That's pretty impactful.
Absolutely. And the way that the game world reacts to you is such a big part of the experience. Because the game's marketing was all about like, you know, who are you going to be? Your choices matter. And
Yeah.
like stuff like that gets you to buy into that. You're like, "Oh shit, I broke this window." And this NPC just started yelling and screaming like, "Oh my god, he's crazy." I just want another good Fable game. Is that so much to ask?
I feel like we're in a good timeline. I'm very hopeful, which I'm normally not, but you know, again, you and I have been, our reception has been positive towards those trailers, so I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, I think it's coming out this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I don't think we've seen any real gameplay though. I think the last like the only trailers we've seen have been like cinematic.
The most recent one, they don't call it a trailer, they call it something else. I'll send it to you. You can
Okay.
there's some combat gameplay.
Okay, all right. I haven't seen any. This is looking good. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
There's some weight to it, brother. It's
Yeah,
looking pretty juicy.
I could feel it. I was looking at the animations. I'm like, "Oh, there's some heft." Cuz like I
Yeah.
I've always made this argument that you could have the simplest combat system imaginable, but if it feels really good to hit things, I would play that game over something with the most complicated, in depth combat system that feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's like Phantasy Star Online to me. It's not that complicated, but it just, for me, it feels very good to play.
Yeah. For me, that's also like the Yakuza series. Like the Yakuza series, the combat it's not like dead simple, but like it's never been ever super complicated. It's pretty simple. But I enjoy the combat because they do a good job of just making you like, "Oh man, I am like really punching this guy and it feels good."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. I love stuff that has that kind of feedback. It doesn't need to be any more than it feels good. It's nice to like have variance, but as long as it feels good, that's what matters to me at the end of the day.
For sure. I mean, obviously, I'm a junkie when it comes to like high octane like action games. You know, I
Yeah.
really do love like a complex combat system, but like again, like it doesn't matter if your combat system is really good if it doesn't feel good. Even in Fable 1, I feel like Fable 1 got the game feel right. There's just something like even just walking around in Fable 1, there's just something about like the way that your character like jogs around that feels good. And that's
Yeah.
it's like the little details like that that I always really appreciated about the original Fable. And I think that's one of the reasons why I came back to it so much. It's just that the game just feels good to play.
Yeah, even after all this time, it still feels great. Not even feels great in like playability. Little animations that maybe you wouldn't think about necessarily like the first time you play through the game, but when it's something you come back to and something you care about and appreciate that you can pick up these little details on. You just referenced like the jogging animation. Dude, I completely fucking agree. I don't know what it is about that, but it just feels like good. Feels good to see, feels good to do.
And just like the way that his feet, you know, like there's just something
Yeah,
about it.
I
There's
don't.
something about the animation. One thing I really wanted to touch on is the Lost Chapters. I bought the vanilla version of the game. Not exactly when it came out, I don't think, but I had the original version of the game way before Lost Chapters. And that was the version that I played the most. And I remember selling my copy of the game and getting the Lost Chapters. And I think by then, I was kind of already done with Fable. I was playing through the Lost Chapters just so I could see the new content. I already feel like I was kind of pushing myself to play through it. It's been so long, I don't even like viscerally remember how I felt about the new content. I don't think I had a high opinion of it because that was the last time I played Fable. And I had like no real desire to go back to it until just recently, the anniversary version for this discussion. But playing the game again and seeing the Lost Chapters content again, it was a little weird because I was so familiar with the rest of the game. Like replaying the game was a blast. Even with its issues in regards to difficulty, like it's still such a fun game. But when I got to the Lost Chapters content, it was just a little odd because I'm like, oh, this is kind of familiar, but also felt kind of new. Like with everything else in the game, I had that game like seared into my memory. So it was just like I was just reliving everything again. But the Last Chapter's content is just kind of bland and forgettable, and there's not much to it. I just kind of went through it and I was just like, eh, you know, like.
Yeah.
And another thing too, I feel like the main game ends at just the right time. I feel like it ends right when you feel like you're done with the game. You're just at the point where you leveled up all the stuff you wanted to level up. You've gotten all the spells you wanted at the max level. If there's any other like lingering stats or whatever, like they're probably either maxed out or they're close to maxed out. And I feel like the Lost Chapters, I was just kind of like, okay, I have everything done. I guess I'll start leveling up some other spells just because like just felt like there wasn't really anything much else to do, and the game just kind of like sprinkled more stuff at the end and it wasn't really necessary.
My experience was almost the same as yours. Okay, first of all, about the story in the first game and how like it ends, I thought that Fable ended a lot sooner than I wanted it to, but that the ending was still like definitive. Like it felt like definitive. It was like this is like an ending that is ending, and there's not going to be anything after this. And then the Lost Chapters keeps it going. Wasn't necessarily crazy about that, especially because like all I wanted from the Lost Chapters, I didn't need more main story. I wanted more of all the other things that I thought were so interesting about the game. And I didn't get any of that.
Yeah.
You got another town where everything operates the same, it just looks different. You got more story, which tells more of the same story. And you got a few additional quests that operate very similar to all the other quests, if you could even call them quests when they're more like sub quests. So I remember playing it through for the first time and being like, "Oh, this is great, more Fable." But when I played it through it more as I got older and then looking back on it now, I'm just like, yeah, not crazy about that.
I will at least say that the dragon boss fight is probably one of the better like gameplay set pieces in the game. If the game wasn't so easy, it would
Yeah.
probably be a more fun boss fight. But even still, like it's pretty cinematic. It's cool. It feels like a pretty epic boss fight, and it does feel like a fitting conclusion for the game.
I think the thing that really sticks out to me if we're talking about like battles specifically are when you are fighting you choose if you're evil, you fight like the living heroes, and if you're bad, you fight the alternate versions for their hero souls.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're fighting, I don't remember who it is that you're fighting, but you're hearing Jack of Blades talk to you as you're fighting these people. And I thought that was like a really cool touch because like it characterized him further. He kind of has like this really morbid sense of humor. So even though I wasn't really into the story, I really liked that for it.
I think Jack of Blades is a great character. I have one problem. I liked his voice better in the original game.
Yes.
I do not
Yes.
like how they gave him this weird demonic voice in Lost Chapters.
He had such character in the first game just with his voice acting and that presence. He is such an effective character in that story, in that setting. And with that voice, it's almost like it reminds me of, this is kind of an odd comparison because they're so different. Tom Hardy in the Batman movies, when he plays Bane, there's like this real person he based his voice off of, and that's why it sounds like it's not just because he was trying to sound strange. He based it off this person for a specific reason from history who had a very interesting, unique sounding voice, and that's where the voice came from. And I feel like that's similar to what was with Fable 1. It was like embodying this kind of like this really strange, not what you would have expected. And then in Fable the Lost Chapters, they just completely trash that and then give him like deep, dark, demonic voice. It's so much
Generic.
less original. Yeah, it's so generic.
Yeah, like I still vividly remember how he sounded in the original game, like because he doesn't sound how you expect when you first see Jack of Blades, right? Like he's got like the red clothes, he's got the mask on, like he seems so enigmatic, and then you hear his voice and you're just like, "Oh, that's what he sounds like?" Oh, that's so different. Like it adds so much to his character. It makes him feel I feel like that voice makes him feel more like an otherworldly presence
Yeah.
compared to the ironically more otherworldly sounding voice.
I completely agree. It's yeah. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth.
I think we agree that like the story overall is it's pretty basic, it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. It's like there's not much to it, but I think something that the story is pretty effective with is the connection that you have like with your family. So, like your sister and your mom in particular. Even if as characters they're not super fleshed out or super deep or anything, the game still does a good job of getting you to care about them. When you find out like, oh, your sister's in Twin Blades camp, you're like, I'm gonna go save my sister. Only to find like, oh wait, she's blind and she's actually been like helping Twin Blade. It's like, oh, wasn't expecting that. And then you find your mom in the prison, and that's another subversion because like your mom was like this badass hero. Now she's here as like this little old woman wasting away. But something I really like is you have that moment where you're escorting her and she comments on like, oh, you've grown so strong, so you've clearly like someone like trained you really well. And like that's like a little thing, but it that always meant a lot to me because I was like, yeah, I have come so far, haven't I, mom? Like
Yeah. Literally haven't thought about this in so long. It's such an interesting point because it just the first thing I thought of when you talk about Teresa and your mom is with Teresa when you find her at the bandit camp. It's shocking to me to begin with when you not shocking. It was surprising to me first playing through the game when you find out that she's alive and that you're going to find her. And then you find her, and when I played it, I'm expecting a warm sibling reunion, but she's almost like kind of flippant about seeing you.
Yeah, a
There's
little
like a
cold.
coolness to her that's like, and you understand that she's like the blind seeress. She's literally like become something more than like just like a family member. She has like a very like distinctive role, not just in that game, but even the next game as well. So like her role is like very important going further, and she's less your sister now as much as she is this other person. So like when you see her and you immediately feel that like you can reach out and touch her, but there's a disconnect between you two now. She is like fundamentally changed. But then you also look at yourself and it's like, no, wait, I've also changed. I'm definitely not the person that she knew either. And there was something really powerful about that moment
Yeah.
that resonated with me. I feel like they wrote that aspect of family very well and being estranged and then rejoining once more. The same could be said with your mom as well. But I just I was very surprised as well to find your mom later in the game because like it just wasn't something I was expecting at all. My takeaway from that wasn't really anything more than the shock of being like, oh shit, there
There
she
she
is.
is. Yeah.
There's mom. But yeah, it was still really cool.
Another character that I also really like, and I think is one of the best characters in the game. I just wish they did more with her. Was Whisper, because Whisper is supposed to be like your rival in the game,
Yeah.
and typically if you took a quest that she's associated with, she'd take the opposite one. Like you can either choose to defend Orchard Farm or to attack it, and she would take like the opposite, and it would result in like a fight between you two. And there's another like quest in Orchard Farm where it's a contest to see like, oh, which one of you can kill more hobs. And I just wish there was a few more quests like that, because those were so much fun. Because like it's kind of like Gary Oak from Pokemon, right? Like
Yeah,
it
exactly. Yeah.
it feels good. It feels good to have a rival that's supposed to be someone you can directly compare yourself to, and just owning them. It feels
Yep.
awesome. Owning Gary Oak in Pokemon games will never not be awesome. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
With Gary O, because he's so smug. And Whisper's not like as smug, but she is still kind of like a cocky little shit where she's like, I bet I can kill more hobs than you little farm boy. Like she
Yeah.
is. I feel like with Whisper it's a little friendlier. Like with Gary Oak, Gary Oak
He was the
was
bastard.
he's just a bastard. While
Yeah.
like Whisper feels more like it's a little more friendly ribbing, friendly rivalry. And this is a scene that I don't think a lot of people saw, but I got to see it on this latest playthrough. So after you do the tournament with her, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Afterwards, if you go back to Oakvale, she will be in the bar, and you can talk to her, and she actually opens up and she's like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to my home continent because you are clearly the better hero. I've always been trying to like catch up to you, and you've always been one step ahead of me. So, I don't think with you around I can do there's no reason for me to be here." And she ends up going back to where she originally came from, and she becomes like a hero over there. And I was like, this is such a cool way to end the rivalry, because it is like a really sincere and vulnerable moment that feels earned, because on both of your ends. One, because you have been playing through the game. You have been leveling up your character. You have been trying to be the biggest fucking badass, partly because you want to shut her up. But then you have this moment where you're like, "Oh, but she's been doing the same thing, but has been losing." And
Yeah.
you get to see the other side of that. And the fact that like they have that moment where she opens up and is vulnerable is such a great moment. But of course, you don't see that if you were an asshole and you killed her in the tournament.
Yeah. I like how intimate of the a moment it. You made the point of like you can miss it. Almost like that, it lends to the quietness of the moment. You go from like literally standing before her around like the roaring crowd of the arena, ready to deal like the death blow, and then it resolves with you both literally in your hometown, and you come to this like this. You've always carried like assumably like a mutual respect towards one another, but here it's like definitive, and you're
Mm-hmm.
saying your farewells and the game's not over yet. There's a lot of like different parts that come into play that make the moment special. I can't remember. I think she makes a point to say like in so many words that she was trying to like make her brother proud, or her brother was egging her on, because like her
Yeah.
brother like doesn't like you. He doesn't like you for the entire game.
It doesn't
Um,
matter what you do, he will
yeah.
always hate you.
So you never feel too bad for stealing Lady Grey from him if you decide to go that route. But
True,
I
true.
like that she because like that's like just another way in which she mirrors you is with her family too. You don't really like get that from any other character in the game outside of yourself, except for Whisper. And I love that you mentioned like you wish they would have built more on your story with her, because yeah, I could have done with like 10 more quests that were related to Whisper in some way. And you know, for a game with like so many extremes, to have seen them like push her story further into like being the opposite morality of whichever one you chose, I think would have been really interesting. I like what they have a lot, and I think you make a really good point, because as a kid I just thought she was like a little shit and I always wanted to beat her, but as like an adult, as I got older, I really appreciate her place in the story.
And like I was saying before, I think it also would have made for a meaningful romance too if they would have
Yeah.
given you that option. This is someone that you've been friends with for a really long time. Like you could make the argument that there's no one else that the hero knows, like, or is as close with compared to Whisper.
That is a very good point. Yeah. I would have been down with that for sure. And I also just like, this is kind of unrelated to the point you just made, but there's another scenario with her that you can miss, where if you finish everything at the guild right before graduation and you don't go back to the guild woods, there is a very short quest with her that you can do, where there are like 4 bandits in the guild woods that you kill
Oh
with
yeah.
her.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's kind of just like, you know, as shitty as things were, not maybe not shitty, but maybe like the little bit of tension between you two kind of ends on like a high note before things get bad. So that was kind of nice.
For sure, for sure. Cause yeah, like a lot of the relationship is kind of defined by like the tension between you two of like, I'm gonna be the bigger, stronger, better hero. I feel like there's just so much that they could have done with that. Like you said, like it would have been cool if depending on your actions, you know, you would have pushed her into becoming a villainess. In her desire to try and surpass you, she ends up like making a bunch of mistakes and she becomes a villainess.
Yeah.
Your decisions could have either been to like make things worse for her, or maybe you help snap her out of it, and then she realized like, oh man, I fucked up. I've been so blinded by my rivalry with you. Like, oh man, they could have done so much.
Jack doesn't really use that many like instruments that have like a really deep connection to to you as the player, as Chicken Chaser Farm Boy. It would have been interesting to have like, you know, in her last ditch effort to be better, for her to have been like manipulated by Jack, and
Yeah,
yeah, I
you
mean, I
know.
feel like that could have been a possibility there. I'm just like making guesses at things at this point, so it's
I
not
mean
really
that
anything. But
I think that would have been cool, and I think that would have been in line with her character. Just either
yeah,
and I think it would have been better like in this made up scenario if it was something that she did willingly, like not that she was being possessed, but like, you know, Jack of Blades like convinced her. You know,
right.
like he could like whisper into her, you know, in her ear. It's like, don't aren't you tired of playing second fiddle to him? Like,
Yeah, with the OG voice.
yeah, of course. That would have been so cool.
Yeah,
But you know, I think when talking about like, oh, what could have been, whatever with this game, it does always fall back on like, well, they gave us so much already.
yeah.
Like the game is a pretty complete experience as is.
For me, it like lends to how good of a game it is to want more, even when it is like you can look at it and be like, oh, this is great. I'm so thankful for everything we got. I still want more though. And
Yeah,
that's like, you know,
absolutely.
hopefully the new Fable will give us that a little bit.
We can only hope. With that in mind, is there any like final anything else you want to bring up before we bring it to a close?
No, I feel like we touched on everything. That felt very good, very in depth, very comprehensive.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. I guess just as a final word, I feel that if you've listened to this and you've never played Fable, I would say Fable is a game that's definitely at least worth trying out because it's a really cool, unique, and interesting game. And there's not a lot of games like it. Yeah, it's got its issues. I've been complaining about the difficulty in particular. They really should have done more to make it so that you just don't steamroll through the game. But even then, like, the game's still fun. Like, even when I was like mowing down enemies, you know, and I had like 99 apple pies in my pocket that I could scarf on, you know, like it was still fun. It was still undeniably fun to assassin rush behind an enemy, use inflamed, enchant my bow with multi arrow, and just like see like a bunch of arrows like fly out and just like turn an enemy into Swiss cheese. It's just so much fun being able to go back and forth between melee combat and bow and arrow and using all these different types of spells. It's just fun. And the game gives you this great sense of adventure. I was going on before about how handcrafted it feels. And it does. This feels like a world that was crafted with love, with attention to detail. This feels like a living, breathing world that's filled with color and personality. Even though I played the anniversary version, and I'm not as much of a fan of the visuals in that version compared to the OGs. You know, even still, like the charm still comes through regardless. It's a game that will make you laugh. I'm not going to say it's especially thought-provoking. It's not like a super deep or like intellectual game or anything like that, but it's still a really interesting game. It's still a game that will, once you play through it, I don't think it'll be a game you'll like forget about. It's been like 2 decades and Jake and I are still thinking about it and talking about it, and that's for a reason.
You can name yourself Arseface and people will call you Arseface.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Thank you for joining me, Jake. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Gamer Daniel.
This has been the Essays and Espresso podcast. Take care, everyone.